Hello folks, I am Mother Master and welcome to this video. I've recently made a video about integrating the new Groom mechanic into Unreal Engine 4.25, and now that Unreal Engine 4.25, the final version released, I decided to make a tutorial how to create a little more advanced hair, because a lot of people were requesting it. So this is what this video will be about. As you can see, I am where the last video has stopped. This is the basic integration of Groom into Unreal Engine 4.25, and now I'm going to show you how to create a little more advanced hair setup. Okay, here we are in Blender. Before I start, I have to say this video is for people that have a basic understanding of Blender and know how to use it properly. Also, this video is not about creating a particle hair from scratch. This means I won't spawn particles all over my body and sculpting as I want. Also, this video will not be about creating particle hair from HairCards, because for this there are already tutorials on YouTube. So what this video will be about is creating particle hair from a given hair mesh. This hair mesh I found on the internet, and I basically brought it into the right position here and made the size fit. And for the purpose of this tutorial, this is enough, at least for me now. Okay, what I want to do now is to replace the hair that we got in Unreal Engine 4 from the last tutorial. Link will be in the description, by the way. I would replace this with the hair we have in Blender at the moment. And to make this work, we have to convert this hair mesh to particle hair. How are we going to do this? I select the hair mesh, go to edit mode, select all and press P, and select by loose parts. Most hair you will find on the internet, sculpted or modeled, will be made of multiple parts, and by dividing them you will get multiple parts of the hair, which we can step by step convert to hair particles. So now that I have multiple parts of my hair, I pick this big one, and let's say I want to hide the others, so I select them all and press H to hide them, to have only this big part here. Next step is I go into the particle properties and hit the plus icon here while I selected the hair mesh, and then click on that plus, click on hair, and this will spawn hair. Of course, this is too long at the moment, so for hair length I choose, let's say, 0.1. This should be okay for my purpose. For segments I like to use, let's say, 10. Then let's go to the other properties here. Viewport display is basically what's displayed on here. Here I choose also 10. And for children, this will basically add more hair to the ones we already have here. I choose interpolated, and as you can see, it adds 10 times the hair we had before. And you have to be really careful about the render amount here, because the render amount is this what will be exported later. And if this is 100, the file will be really big, and the load times will be really big, and the FPS will be really low. So I also set this to 10. Okay, now that my hair is here, I go into the sculpting mode and choose on the top left here the particle edit. And now we have the comp mode basically. I have comp, and with F I can increase the size of my comp, and now I brush or comp the hair to the shape I want. And you might notice now that there are some edges here. This is just because of our viewport settings. if you are in the particle edit mode and go to the top right here, you can top right and the active tool settings, you can go to options, and here you can see the path steps. And if you remember, I set my path steps to 10, so I will set it here to 10 too. This will make the hair in sculpt mode same as in the layout mode. Okay, another necessary setting here is the deflect emitter. This will mean that when we are combing our hair, it will not go through the basic mesh. This means we can comb along the mesh here, and this is very handy for the thing I'm doing here. So now what I'm doing is just combing the hair to the shape that I want, and always look at it from different angles. Okay, once you are happy with the basic shape, you can now go to the cut tool and cut the rest of the hair off that is not needed here. So the first part of our hair mesh is basically finished, and now I can try export this. When you remember in the first tutorial, we have already imported hair mesh. I think I called it another name, but this time it's called My Hair. And once you have one hair groom asset inside your Unreal Engine, you can always replace it with any other groom asset, and it will work out of the box. It just has to be the same name and the same location. So I minimize that, and when I now go in Blender into File and Export Alembic, press this little arrow here, set the scale to 100, start and end frame 1, and export only selected objects. As you can see, my hair.apc is already the right name, and my hair.apc is on my desktop. It's already the right location, so I hit Export Alembic. Then I go into Unreal Engine again, and now I can right click and re-import this and just hit import. And now when I hit play, the hair is on my character. Now you can adjust some settings. For the moment I'm going into my third person character, and here the hair width is a little bit too thick, I think, because it's a hair width of 1. So this time I choose 0.05. This is better, I think, and for the shadow density I also choose 0.1. Okay, let's hit compile and check how it looks in game. The shadow density is still a little too strong, so I just go a little lower on that. And maybe even the hair width is still too thick. So I go also lower on that, compile and play, and now we are getting close to it. Okay, this is basically the first part of our hair mesh. What I'm going to do now is do the rest in Blender. In layout mode, as you remember we have hidden the other hair parts. So Alt plus H, and there are they again. And now I'm going to click on each again and make what I did for the first part to all the others too. Just a little side note here, when you're working on smaller parts of the hair, you don't need so much children of the hair, so maybe an amount of 5 will be okay here. Okay, now I'm kinda finished with a very basic and fast setup. When you got a full head of hair, it might take a little longer, and you of course can take your time with it and make it as clean as you want. But for my purpose, this is good enough. And now a little side note, when you go to file and export as Alembic, you usually always have to set the end frame here, but you also can set this in the timeline on the bottom here. Usually the end is at 250, and here I set it to 1, so it won't be you don't have to set it always to 1 on the export. So but now let's hit File, Export, and Alembic. Again, it's my hair, export Alembic, and now I import it into my engine. Before I import, I save, because I don't know if the engine will crash. And now I right click on my hair and hit re-import. Hit import. Because the hair is now a little bit bigger and denser, it might take a little longer or even a few minutes depending on the amount of your hair. So now when I hit play, as you can see, it has nicely been imported. And if your hair or hair mesh is a little more denser or complex, this hair won't be so see-through. And if it's still too see-through, you can even set the hair width a little bit thicker, and so it won't be see-through anymore. So now hit compile. A little side note again, whenever you right click and re-import the mesh, the hair asset, the hair physics will be disabled again. So you always have to have the simulation enabled again once you re-imported a hair asset. So when you click on it, you can now see it's inside and it's simulating, at least sort of. And now it's basically just adjustment of settings to make the hair behaving as you like. When you are opening the hair asset, you have a lot of settings here, and the settings that are interesting to me are, for example, in the collision constraint, the strands viscosity. If you set this to a very low value, the hair becomes very light. It feels really light then, and has a much more natural movement. It's still not perfect, of course, but there are still a lot of settings we can tweak. For example, the project bend, when I check this checkbox and hit apply, it doesn't bug out that much anymore. It's a little more stiffer and consistent, just a little more. And you can also adjust the damping settings here. If you wanted to make it really stiff, you increase these values for the damping, and it's basically nearly no movement. You can of course also disable the physics simulation at all, because having the hair as this is already a nice effect. You can also play around with the solver settings. The standard setting is angular springs. The other one is coserate rods, whatever this means, but you usually see a difference in the behavior, especially when you have longer hair. But for the moment I will leave it at angular springs. Also you can change the gravity. At the moment it's 0, it's pushing down. If you make this a positive value, it will pushing the hair up. Also interesting are the stretch and stiffness values, if you want to solve them or not. And if it comes to collision, especially for longer hair, there is a collision radius. I figured out that collision is another topic here, and for me, especially for longer hair, I remember using values about 150. Just play around with these values until you got something that fits your needs. Okay, once you have set all your settings to your liking, we can now go further and adjust the material, because the material that comes with the Groom set is basically the hair default material that's inside the Unreal Engine. But on the documentation about hair, there is a setup for a hair material that will make the hair even more realistic, and you can adjust it to different lighting conditions and make certain effects on it with it. Since these are all parameters, you can tweak them on runtime. And one side note I have to make here is, when you click on the material itself, it has to be the hair shading model. It has to be two-sided, and very important, it has to be used with hair strands. If you don't hit this checkbox, you won't be able to fill in a new material on your Groom hair here. It just won't work. Once you did that, you can fit in a new hair material. As you can see, I have already set up a hair material. I will put a link in the description how to set up this material. And let's say I can now right click on it, create a material instance, save. And when I go into my blueprint again, where is it? I can now choose my new hair material instance, and as you can see, it's already looking a little bit different. This time it's a red hair color, and a good thing now, because I made a hair material instance, I can now, let's say, drag my third-person character into my world. And when I open up my material instance, I can tweak the values here for the color in real time, and also for the brightness and the other settings that come with this material. And this is basically the way it's meant to be with the hair, the material that is meant to be used with the hair. So this basically sums it up for this video. I know this one was a little bit clumsy, but I think you know how I made the hair from my first video tutorial, and I hope you can do this on yourself. If you got any questions or suggestions, write them in the comments. And I also want to thank my patrons, and they really keep me motivated and help me to get this stuff going. And please consider subscribing. If you need a further video on this, just write it into the comments. I just hope you like this video. I hope you learned something, and I would also like to see some creations you might make with this. So if you are going to use this, maybe share some pictures in the comments, and I would be really glad to see that. So bye for now, see you in the next video.